Okay, I'm going to call to order the second half of the General Enterprise and Other Funds Budget Committee meeting. We're doing this meeting electronically due to the COVID restrictions. We're going to have everybody turn on their mics and the video so we can see as we go through the roll call. Robert, would you just call the roll, please?
Thank you. Greg Gamer.
Here.
Matt Barber.
Here.
Steve Clements.
Here.
Corrine Dudo.
Here.
Ed Henninger.
Here.
Nicole Howard.
Here.
Gary Lillard.
Here.
Scott McConnell.
Here.
Marianne Meisner.
Here.
Ashley O'Toole.
Here.
Justin Rock.
Here.
Jim Whitbeck.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we're unanimous in attendance. And just as a reminder, Corrine Dudo and Justin Rock have declared conflicts of interest, so they will not be participating in the discussion or the vote on any of the budgets this evening.
Okay. Do we have an approval of the agenda?
You don't need a motion for that. There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay. So the public hearings on the proposed budgets and state revenue sharing are still open and shall remain open until the close of the hearings. Robert, could you go ahead and give us a recap of what we've done so far?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last night, the Budget Committee, acting as the Urban Renewal Agency's Budget Committee, did approve the Urban Renewal Agency budget, and that has been forwarded or will be forwarded to the Urban Renewal Agency for adoption in June. We went through a presentation on the city's general fund, enterprise and other funds. There were a number of questions that were asked by Budget Committee members, and we got through all of those budgets in terms of the question and answer portion. And the task before the committee this evening is first to deliberate on the city's general fund budget and approve that. Then that will then be forwarded to the city council for adoption in June. And then to look at the enterprise and other funds. We did advertise and solicit for public comments submitted in writing, or people could have made an appointment to testify over the phone. We did not receive any comments for the city's general fund, and no one requested to phone in. And we did receive one piece of correspondence that will address regarding the ADA ramp at Arts Center, submitted by Arts Center East. And we'll talk about that when we get to the enterprise and other funds. So I'll go ahead and read their letter into the record at that time as the only public comments that we've received. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you for deliberations. I will say that I know that Mayor Pro Tem Lillard last night at the beginning of the presentation indicated that he wanted to talk a little bit about things we might be able to do related to COVID-19. And I know that he probably is going to want to make a couple comments when we get to the deliberations. So back to you, sir.
Okay. As you said, we don't have any public testimony. So I will go ahead and open up for deliberations in connection with the general fund budget only. Gary, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as Robert mentioned, I had brought up the idea of maybe appropriating some additional funds for COVID-19 assistance to businesses or individuals. I've talked to Robert a little bit more about it. I think there would be considerable issues in trying to manage it with individuals. But he did come up with one idea that I really liked, assuming, of course, that the committee thinks it's a good idea to begin with. That would be to remove some funds from the general fund contingency and move them to the council manager contingency fund. So if a need arose, then the council would have that flexibility to tap those funds. But did want to get some input from the committee as to what people think about this.
Just as a clarification, it wouldn't go to the council manager contingency. It would actually be appropriated as part of the council manager's budget in the same line item that we have the emergency loans. And then the actual use of those funds, if the budget committee approves them and the city council ultimately adopts a budget with those in there, we would go back to the council for specific use of those funds in the next fiscal year.
Thank you for that.
Other comments?
What would be the advantage of that scenario versus just leaving it in contingency?
I think two things. One, we would not have to do a resolution to move those dollars, but also contingency is really designed for unanticipated, unexpected costs. And where I see a potential challenge is specific to the emergency loan fund for the businesses. That's something we've established in this year's budget. And if we think we might provide additional funding for that program, we really should appropriate those dollars, because I don't think it would be, I don't think that it would be consistent with Oregon budget law to have a program that during the budget committee, we talked about that there's a possibility for additional requirements for that and not appropriating the dollars. So I think procedurally, it is much cleaner. And then if we end up not using those dollars, they would just stay in fund balance anyway. So I think it's better to put it into an appropriation that would be specific to COVID-19 efforts. It would require approval of the councils, the way we would structure that. We just wouldn't have to do the resolution, and we would be consistent with budget law.
So the way that those monies would be distributed wouldn't be determined right now. So if we determine that a loan program isn't the best way to help our community, we would have flexibility to do something else.
Yeah, in fact, what we will do is we're going to rename that budget line in the council manager's budget. I think currently it reads business loan program or emergency loan program. We'll rename that something related to COVID-19 to make it very clear what that's intended to do.
Because there might be some other scenarios like help with housing, or there's any number of things besides business loans. So it would give us flexibility for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion, not to name it the emergency loan fund, but to allow it a broader title, as you suggested, Robert, to not restrict the money and then to have to say, well, I thought that was in loans. No, we have to move it out now. I think that would be more flexibility.
Couple of questions, Robert. Do we need a motion to rename that line item in the budget?
If we opt to increase that appropriation amount, then I think that, first of all, you don't need a motion to rename the line. And if we don't appropriate more money against that line, I think we would leave it emergency loan, because that's what is allocated to it. We could also rename it even if we only use it for the loan program. It's not that significant of a deal what specifically you call it. Where the significant lies is in the use of those funds.
So it seems like it might make sense just to create a new line that is COVID-19 and put any money that we decide to do that into there. The other thing I wonder about is what happens if hopefully we don't need to spend that money at the end of this fiscal year coming. What happens to that money? Do we then reallocate it or move it back into something else?
Any funds in any of our budgets that are not spent stay in the fund balance for that fund. So these dollars would stay in the general fund unless they're spent. And then for that line specifically, if we've made all the loans that we're going to make and we're not anticipating any additional expenditures related to COVID-19, we would show an estimated amount in the proposed budget for what we have spent to date, and then we would not be requesting or proposing any additional appropriations against that same line for the following fiscal year. If the situation was such that we're continuing to see a need to expend dollars out of that budget line, we would carry those dollars into the next year if there were any left and ask for additional funds to be allocated to that if we felt they were needed.
Okay.
Long answer to your short question.
That's fine. Help me out. Did I hear an amount, or did that blow by me, or did I hear an actual amount?
I don't think we specified a specific amount.
No, I hadn't really given that any consideration, but something for the committee to decide if they're on board with the idea.
Well, I
Robert,
like
I'm
the
open
idea.
to suggestions or ideas on amounts.
Well, I would suggest either the 300,000 or 400,000 from the contingency fund that's 750 now.
One thing to consider, Robert, how much demand has there been for the current emergency loan fund? That might give us some direction as to what could be needed.
Yeah, right now we're sitting at 16 approved funded loans. We have 2 pending. We have 3 that we have partial applications, and we have had additional interest in that. So if I were to make a recommendation about a dollar amount to appropriate moving out of contingency, I think I would go with 250,000.
Do we need a motion to do that?
I would prefer that we did a motion to do that. In that way, we can do a roll call vote so there's no confusion about it. And just as a reminder, Councilor Dudo, because of her conflict, cannot vote on that.
Well, I move that we move 250,000 from the contingency, the general fund contingency, into the city manager's budget with the line item of the COVID-19. And
I'll
then
second that.
I welcome discussion from other people.
And Steve, did you second that?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table that's been seconded to move $250,000 from the contingency fund to the manager's budget. I'm not getting that quite right, but and then change the line item for it to something to deal with the COVID-19.
Correct.
Okay, so further discussion on that?
I agree. There needs to be things that are, some sort of assistance that's provided probably by the city. My only concern is the management of the loans, and maybe Robert can enlighten us a little bit on how that's being managed. Or,
Sure.
Obviously the city's not bankers, but I know in the past you've had a loan program before, so maybe just a little bit of detail on that.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So the current emergency loan program is being administered by Northeast Oregon Economic Development District. We're advertising that. We have an application that we modeled after another community, and actually there are very few cities in Oregon that are actually providing this type of assistance to businesses. So it's really pretty exceptional that we're able to do that, and really think it's much needed and quick help to businesses. We're literally turning these things around inside of a week. So NEOEDD, through their loan officer, runs the credit check. We get a recommendation from NEOEDD. Myself and Christine Jarsky and Lisa Dawson, the executive director of NEOEDD, take a look at those. Ultimately, I make the decision on the funding. Based on those recommendations, we issue an award letter, provide the promissory note, loan agreement. When we get those signed, we also get back an authorization and a voided check. And if I sign them today, we're doing an electronic funds transfer tomorrow morning, and they'll have their money in 2 days. And literally, we are turning these things around inside of a week from the time that we put an application and everything in people's hands. So it's going very quickly, and really pleased with the program. And then NEOEDD will collect the payments on those. Those don't start for 6 months. Then the first 6 months is interest only. Most of the people that have applied have also included a direct debit form, so that those payments, when they do start, can automatically be taken. And so I'm really confident in the way that this program will be administered. And if we expand the funding of that with additional dollars for the proposed budget, we would continue to do that. And we're compensating NEOEDD based on kind of a time spent. They've got a formula that they use for charging out of services. And so we allocated some of the dollars from the 300,000 that we moved over this budget year to make sure that we're paying for that through the life of the loans.
Go
Okay,
ahead, Ed.
thank you.
Okay.
I have one more question. So I'm just wondering, because I know in the past, or with URA, loans and things of that nature, that all it's public information. Is that going to be the case here, or how are you going about that?
At the present time, we have not been releasing the information of who has applied and who has received the funding. So that's the way that we're treating it.
Robert, is this loan irregardless of whether they get an SBA loan or?
Completely independent.
Okay.
I think this is a good idea. The loan program that we have now is really direct, and it's very specific. To add some money to a line item that gives us more flexibility. Robert and I talked about this a little bit this afternoon. We could, I'm assuming that we could use that money to support the local food bank, for instance, if we need to, which would benefit people around the city and around the county. We don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. I think it's a fair guess to say that this is going to be around for a while, and having the flexibility over the next 12 months to bring some money to bear pretty quickly, because that's what it gives us, is a real solid idea. So I thank Gary for bringing that idea up, and that we have a motion. I appreciate that.
What are the amount limits?
So for the current emergency loan program, the maximum that they can borrow is $10,000.
Okay. Just for some information, I talked to the unemployment office today, and in the last 5 weeks, the unemployment claims it's 10 times what it was last year for this same period of time. So I agree, we've got some real challenges coming up, and there's going to be a lot of businesses needing help.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
This money is all geared specifically for businesses. Am I understanding that correct?
Well, the emergency loan program that's currently funded in this fiscal year is strictly for businesses. The way that the motion is crafted, and as Mayor Pro Tem Lillard put it out there, this $250,000 in next year's budget would not be specifically earmarked for anything at this point. That would be a decision that ultimately would rest with the council when we came forward and said what we wanted to do with those dollars. And it could be additional funding to add to the loan program. It could be some other COVID-19 related need that we're not sure what it is today.
So by doing this, we're leaving us as much flexibility as we can with the money.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's good. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. Robert, could you do the roll call?
I will. Greg Amer,
Yes.
Matt Barber,
Yes.
Steve Clements,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo is an abstention. Ed Hinginger,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Scott McConnell,
Yes.
Marianne Miesner,
Yes.
Ashley O'Toole.
Yes.
Justin Rock is an abstention. Jim Whitbeck.
Yes.
Thank you. Carries.
Okay. So that's, okay. So, is there any other discussion on the general fund budget? Okay, if we don't have no further discussion, I would invite a motion to close the public hearing and approve the general fund budget.
I move that the public hearing for the city's general fund budget for fiscal year 2020, 2021 be closed, and that the ad valorem property tax rate of 7.4392 per $1,000 of assessed value be imposed for the general fund, and that the general fund budget be approved as amended and forwarded in its entirety to the city council for adoption during the regular session of the city council on June 3, 2020.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Hey, Robert, could you call the roll?
Yeah, Greg Amer,
No.
Matt Barber,
Yes.
Steve Clements,
Yes.
Corinne Duda's abstention. Ed Henninger,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Scott McConnell,
Yes.
Marianne Miesner,
Yes.
Ashley O'Toole,
Yes.
Justin Rock is an abstention. Jim Whitbeck.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So that will end our public hearing on the general fund budget. We'll move on to the general reserve fund. And I see we've got some public testimony that was received. Could you go ahead and talk about that, Robert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, the Budget Committee passed a motion to allow for $50,000 of the general reserve funds, CIP dollars, to be made available as matching funds for Arts Center East, specific to ADA improvements at the old Carnegie Library. The city owns that property, and we received correspondence from Arts Center East indicating that they're asking that the ability to receive those matching funds be carried forward into next fiscal year. And I will go ahead and read that letter from them. And this was provided to the Budget Committee with some supporting documents by email. And it's dated April 24th. In connection with the upcoming city budget hearings, please accept this request regarding the Arts Center East ADA accessibility capital campaign and consider our request to extend the CAS match into the coming fiscal year. Over the last year, Arts Center East has accomplished the following to make the second floor of the city-owned Carnegie Library building at 1006 Penn Avenue accessible for all community members. Worked with engineers to determine a lift rather than a ramp is the best option. Had engineers complete concept drawings and identify potential lift types. Had an architect review drawings to advise regarding the next steps. Contacted a contractor to get cost estimates for grant writing purposes. Met the goal of $10,000 in community funded contributions. The concept drawings and specifications regarding the lift used as a reference are included below. Once Arts Center East has a cost estimate in hand, Arts Center East will begin seeking foundation money for the remaining funding. With funding committed, Arts Center East will ask an architect to create more complete drawings to support the bid process. Arts Center East asks the City of LeGrand to extend the $50,000 match into the next fiscal year so that Arts Center East can complete the facility upgrade. Thank you for consideration. And that was submitted by the president of Arts Center East.
So discussion on that.
I have no problem with that extension.
Robert, the money is already in the budget and reserved. Is that correct?
The general fund capital improvements line has more than $50,000, but is not specifically designated to a purpose. And the proposed budget also has sufficient dollars that are identified to be appropriated. Essentially, if the budget committee makes a recommendation to support this extension, we would put a fence around those dollars. At the point in time when Arts Center East has secured funding, they'll come back to the city council to actually get approval to get those funds. So there's another step that was also considered last year, which is ultimately this is a final approval by the city council. There was discussion about whether or not there should be a separate line item, but we didn't feel at the time that there was a need for a separate line item for this, because we could just expend it out of the general CIP line within the general reserve budget if they receive the funding to make this happen, and the council ultimately said yes.
Okay, I'm supportive of the idea that the extension be allowed. Do we need to make that as part of a motion for the reserve or not?
I think it would be cleanest to just simply have a motion that the budget committee recommends to the city council approval of Arts Center East request.
I so move.
Second.
Is that Mary Ann on the second?
Yes.
Thank you.
So it has been moved and seconded that we would continue the $50,000 for Arts Center East for their handicap lift. That would be held in the budget, and the final approval for that would rest with the city council.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion?
Robert, are you suggesting you would then earmark that money in the next budget, or would just leave it in the unappropriated funds, or how would you do that?
In the general reserve fund, there's a line, let me turn to it. In the general reserve fund budget, there's a line number that is general CIP,
Right.
and it's got $295,000. The 50,000 would come out of that 295.
Okay.
And we appropriate that full amount so that we have dollars that if we have a major capital need that occurs during the year, we can access it. But there's nothing specific in mind for that other than the 50,000 that we're talking about right now.
Okay. Any further discussion?
This is Greg. I went and looked at that project. It makes perfect sense. I think the Art Center is a valuable asset to the community.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. It's this time to call the roll.
Okay. Greg Amer,
Yes.
Matt Barber,
Yes.
Steve Clements,
Yes.
Green Dodo is an abstention. Ed Henninger,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Scott McConnell,
Yes.
Marianne Miesner,
Yes. Ashley
Ashley O'Toole,
Yes.
Justin Rock is an abstention. Jim Whitback.
Yes.
Keep calling you back. I'm sorry, Jim Whitback. Thank you.
Okay. So we have that motion approved. So is there any other discussion on the general reserve fund? Okay. Hearing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearings on fiscal year 2020, 2021 budgets and state revenue sharing, and would entertain a motion.
I move that the enterprise and other funds budgets for fiscal year 2020, 2021 be approved as presented and forwarded in their entirety to the city council for adoption during a regular session of the council on June 3rd, 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Robert, because we had that other vote on the Art Center, does that amend this motion?
It does not, because we're not changing any of the appropriation amounts.
Okay. Okay, we got any further discussion? Okay, Robert, could you call the roll, please?
Greg Amer,
Yes.
Matt Barber,
Yes?
Steve Clements,
Yes.
Corinne Duto is abstention, Ed Henninger,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Scott McConnell,
Yes.
Marianne Miesner,
Yes.
Ashley O'Toole,
Yes.
Justin Rock is an abstention, Jim Whitbeck.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess we have fulfilled our mission. I appreciate everybody taking the time and the effort to study this budget and take the time to be at these meetings. I think we went through it in a pretty orderly fashion this year. And unless somebody else has got something to say, I'd say let's adjourn the meeting. And we will.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome
reconvene
job.
during the
Have a good night. Thank you, committee.
regular session scheduled on June 3rd, 2020 to consider the approval of the committee minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks again.